If we want to experience a more inclusive and empowered world, we have to create the space for that to happen. My client and thought leader, Nemo Ashong, demonstrates this beautifully. In this episode, you'll learn the difference between holding space, taking up space, and creating space, and the power of pursuing your vision your way. Nemo Ashong is on a mission to bring together a truly inclusive and empowered world by helping leaders leverage their own unique, authentic, and powerful leadership styles to succeed in their personal and professional lives. He brings this mission to life as the founder and coach of Empjoyment. The people he works with are high-performing, high-potential world leaders, a community of ordinary people who are committed to pursuing possibilities worth creating in their world. This conversation is part of my special 10-episode client feature where I'm featuring incredible clients who inspire me. If you're interested in working with me, a great place to start would be the Unleashed and Unapologetic training, which is the same training that Nemo is in. Head to rubyfremon.com/unleashed to sign up. Today's episode is sponsored by the Mayfair Hotel and Eve American Bistro in downtown LA, home of my annual 3-day event, Amplified Soul Live. The 2019 event takes place February 22nd to the 24th. For info and tickets, head to rubyfremon.com/ASL. Now it is time to move on with this 10-episode client feature series with Nemo Ashong. Hey thought leaders, I am back with another incredible client and thought leader who inspires me. Nemo, welcome to today's thought leader.
Thank you so much, Ruby. It's great to be here.
I am so excited for this conversation for a few reasons. One, you have a mega dynamic personality that I'm excited to share with my audience. And two, you have an extraordinary vision that, from what I have witnessed of you, you are so devoted to. And I would love to kick things off by you sharing that vision with our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So, hey, thought leaders, how are you? What I'm really about in this world is bringing together a truly inclusive and empowered world. The way that I look at it here is, we're bringing together. It's not about creating. I actually believe that what we need for this world to hit the vision that I see is actually already there. So how do we start bringing people together, bringing ideas together, bringing concepts, bringing together a truly inclusive and empowered world? And when I say true inclusion, for me, what it ends up being is there's 7+ billion people on this earth. And what dawned on me, I'm like, the only thing that we have in common is that we're all different. So given that, how do we come together around the fact that we aren't the same?
Right.
And so the way that I look at it is, let's get together and let's celebrate and value the things that make us different. Let's find those unique strengths. Let's find those unique gifts and be able to use that to create a more inclusive world. And from that, Ruby, if I really want to let you know the vision in my mind, I feel like we're on a crossroads right now of life like the Handmaid's Tale, or moving into what I would call the modern Renaissance, a place where like everyone's able to bring their gifts and talents to the world. And like really what I'm about is creating the space for that.
That's amazing. What stood out to me, because normally when people come together to create that sense of connection, we look for connection points, like what makes us the same. But what you're saying is, let's find out, let's uncover what actually makes us different, and let's celebrate that. Could you speak more to that and why, like really from the heart, like why is that so important for you?
All right, cool. Let me actually get there. All right. So the reason that this is important to me, the thing that is that at the end of the day, I am an African American male. And it is actually really interesting because I didn't have to be an African American, or I actually resisted being an African American male, I would say, until 2016. Up until then, I was just Nemo. And what I had found was that there were a lot of different people in my world that were like, well, as a black person, like X, Y, and Z, or you didn't get that opportunity, or they're not thinking about you because you're black, or you have to do more because you're black, and all that stuff. And the way that my life kind of paths and I navigated it was like, no, I'm just Nemo. I really owned what that was. So I can think of in college there was a what they called a program house where they were really, it was like 99% all African Americans. And I remember people would ask me, hey, why aren't you a part of that group? And I'm like, for me, I'm like, it's not the right thing. Actually, just because of this podcast in particular, I'll just say exactly what's on my mind. I was like, I'm finally an adult and I get my first choice and I don't want to self-segregate. I want to learn how to be out there.
Right.
So the reason this is important to me is because where I am, I have this sentence that goes in my mind that says, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. Like, statistically, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be running my own business. I'm not supposed to be living out in Singapore. Like, there's all these things. My parents are from Ghana, West Africa. I'm first generation in America. So statistically, I'm not supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be an actuary. Apparently 2 to 3% of all actuaries are African American. I wasn't supposed to be in tech. Apparently 2 to 3% of all people in tech are African American. Wow. And yet these are the places that I kept finding myself, And so when it came to it, it's like, in 2016, like a lot started happening. I started getting involved in diversity and inclusion at my workplace, being with the global community there. And eventually what came up for me was like, I'm not supposed to be here, and yet I am. I must be doing something differently than others. I must be thinking differently, because I would hear people come up to me, Ruby, and I'm sure you experienced that, where they're like, well, I can't do that. I'm not you, Nemo. Right. And so clearly something about me was doing something that gave me a completely different set of options than others, and so when that's why that started becoming important to me, because as it became more important for people to speak up, as it became more important when I started seeing my peers get to the place where their leadership really mattered, their education was finally like, hey, we need you to put it on, their experiences needed to come out and be out in the world. They actually came at it from a place of, I don't have anything to offer. Everything is happening to me, and I felt very disempowered. Yep. And so that's when I started breaking down a little bit. I was like, what's different? Why do I feel that I can do something here? And I'm like, oh, it's because I know me. I know what I have to offer. I'm not supposed to be here, and yet I am. And so because of that, it's really made it important for me to go and say, how do we create space for other people to come in? How do we create space for new perspectives, new ideas, to continue to contribute toward the future of our world?
Yeah, that resonates so deeply, especially everyone listening, and myself included. We're at this really weird point as a society, where as connected as we are, we're experiencing so much division. And the differences that we once maybe didn't see are now fully apparent, because people are ripping off the blindfolds and everything's coming to the surface, which
is fun.
It's really interesting to witness, right? And it's also really interesting to experience as people of color. I didn't realize so much of what I was experiencing until the blindfold was lifted off, and I was like, shit. So I think it's a really interesting moment in time, especially for you and what you're creating, because above all else, people are seeking to feel as though they belong somewhere. That sense of belonging it's a basic need. Maslow's hierarchy of need. We have to have that sense of belonging. We all are born with it, but right now at this cusp in time, I believe that people are really searching high and low for this. And I love the idea of creating space, because people need to feel that there is a space for them to go, to explore, to express themselves. So tell us more about this space that you are creating.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really important, really quickly, to talk about like what creating space is for me.
Yes.
Because the other day I made a post, and it was actually my shortest post, but it was one of the brought up a lot of derision from others, and it just said, I'm in the middle of an intensive experience. Me and you, we're both at there. And I said, I realized something today. I don't take up space. I don't hold space. I create space.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting was, for me, that there became a distinction because of my personality, because I have a bigness to me. There's a lot that comes on around like, hey, am I actually able to take up this space here? If I show up, if I come into this place, I'm going to make other people, I'm going to suck all the energy out of the room. I'm going to suck all the light out, and I will become the center of this, and it'll be all about me, and so on and so forth. Then we'll have any more room.
Right.
And so I had actively been trying to hide against that, to hold back on that, right? Okay, what do I need to be to kind of diminish so that everyone else still has space for them?
Mm-hmm.
Then there was a place where I'm like, okay, no, I'm going to go into coaching. I'm going to like really listen and hold the space for other people, which is great. And I love doing it. I enjoy having those conversations where we're able to take a space, and when the person enters it, they're able to fully explore whatever's happening within that space.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I'm using create space now, and the reason that it's so important to me at this moment, is that what I've been finding is that there's another level of creating even more room than what that person had entered into, creating even more space for that person to get uncomfortable, to show up more fully, to express what's actually on their mind, mm-hmm. and to take it from there. Mm-hmm. And I think that especially in today's world, being able to create the space for someone to express themselves is necessary. Holding the space, if they're ready for it, then perhaps they can take up all that room. But the way I like to do is to be able to create more space for them. Mm-hmm. So to you, does that make sense to you? First, let me just, before I go on.
Definitely.
Okay.
And before you go on, I actually want to mention this is,
mm-hmm.
I love the idea. So when I think of holding space, I think of, that's really heavy. Like I automatically think, that's really heavy. That's a lot to hold. Like it feels really hard. And one of the things I always say, which is why, so Nemo had this epiphany at an event that we were both at, and we were both working at. And he had this epiphany, like, I don't hold space, I create space. And when you said that, I was celebrating with you, but I was celebrating so hard because I see myself as a container creator. I create containers. And because the idea of holding space has always felt heavy to me, whereas the idea of creating space makes it feel as though someone can walk in and just be in it, versus like, here's someone walking in with all their shit, and now you have to hold it.
Yeah.
So I love that so
much. It's really interesting, and it's one of those things where, honestly, Ruby, even as I talk about it, I can feel emotionally it rubs up on me, because when I made the post, someone responded back and was immediately like, this, like, how dare you? Like, how dare you say that you don't hold space? How much hubris do you have to say that you create space? And it was really interesting. I was like, okay, cool. Like, there's actually something here. There's actually something here around that. And it was actually what it felt like to me here, especially as a thought leader, and to all of us other thought leaders, like, just in posting that one post, it was 4 lines, Ruby. I kid you not, 4 lines. Yeah. It created the space for her to come in.
Audience,
yeah.
He's not used to writing 4 lines, which is why he's emphasizing 4 lines, okay? Nemo is the king of, like, multiple paragraph posts or, like, really long videos. So when he says 4 lines, he's emphasizing it for a fucking reason. 4 lines, and those 4 lines held so much power.
Precisely.
I just have to clarify that.
No, I appreciate you making that real. Like, I appreciate you knowing enough about why that's important, right? And it's interesting because in those 4 lines, there was a space created, right? And I think this is where, as a thought leader and really being out there, being visible and taking up space. In my taking up space of my thought here, I created space for that other person to go ahead and respond and to share her thoughts, to explore her thoughts, to give her a chance to, like, see why am I reacting to this, And then afterwards, I just held this space for her. I'm like, great, enjoy it. Like my comments back weren't, there was nothing I needed to defend. I'm like, right. I'm happy you had this thought. Great. That space is yours. Hold it. I'm going to go back out and create more space. So nowadays, the way that I'm creating space is really in being more visible, being more vocal around some of the areas that really matter to my audience, and some of the challenges, the dangers, the threats, the opportunities that are available for people, and also like the possibilities that are available for people if they decide to really stand for what they believe, and to really stand out as themselves. So that's really the place that I'm creating it. I'm experimenting with a lot of different ways, especially because I tie everything back to my mission. I start with bringing together. And so I'm experimenting with roundtables, open forums where we just get people together. We give them a mic, or if we're on Zoom, they just get the opportunity to speak, and they just get to share, and everyone else just listens. I'm experimenting with one-on-one coaching and deep coaching, and I'm really just trying to. For me, it's about bringing together. I'm sure you said creating that container where there's so much space that you can play around, figure things out for yourself, and understand what's your unique approach to showing up in the world.
Yeah, that's super powerful because so many of us live our lives feeling shackled, right? Or imprisoned when really we built the cage. We built the cage. And so for you to now flip around and say, well, I'm going to create this space. And what's really important for me to point out to you, Nemo, is so I've known you for less than a year, I believe. It's been less than a year. And when we first met, you've always had this personality. It's magnetic, it's dynamic. It's very hard to miss you in a room because you carry that energy. It's just who you be. But you had this like control button on it, which was really interesting to witness the first time I met you. Like you would be you, and then you would like go back into your shell and feel really uncomfortable. And it was very obvious from your energy. And then you'd go be you again, and then you'd go back in your shell. And I think a lot of people do this. And I can't remember the question I asked you or what I said to you, but there was something. Do you
I
remember?
remember.
Oh, you remember? Okay.
I remember. I don't know, the day you changed my life, Ruby. Like,
Well,
yeah.
it's important to point this out because I believe it was a major epiphany for you, and I feel like this could be powerful for our listeners.
So listeners, what Ruby said to me on that day, she's like, "Oh, I get you. You're not looking for people who are running away from problems. You're looking for people who run towards possibilities.
Yeah.
You're not looking for people who run away from problems. You're looking for people who run towards possibilities." And for me, that's really important. Like running towards possibilities, that's where the skill of creating space comes in. Being able to say, wait, we can make this happen. How do we do this? Running towards possibility, come out and say, okay, instead of how do we solve these issues that we've had in the past, what are we trying to actually get done in the future? What do we actually want it to look like? Taking the limitations off the table. What are we trying to get done? And then great, given who we have here, given their unique strengths, given what they're interested in, given their experiences and their backgrounds, like how can we use this unique combination, this unique blend to create something that we wouldn't have been able to do alone? It's collaboration, right? It's like it's like the outcome of inclusion is to be able to collaborate.
That, yeah. And that feels so you because there are people out there, let's just be real. There are coaches, there are people in the personal development industry, there are people out there who are seeking those who are running away from their problems. That's who they want to be their audience, and they provide solutions. But for you, what was really important is you want to attract those people with visions, with something that they're running towards, because for you, this excites you. And I think this is a really important insight to share, because I think it's easy for us to fall into the traps of what everyone else is doing. And it can become confusing then, because everyone's doing the same thing, magnifying problems. I can solve your problems versus like, let me create space for you to expand upon your vision, or let me create space for you to feel as though you belong. Like that's different. That's edgy. That's something that people aren't really doing. And yet it is so aligned with who you are and what you want. And so I think it's really, you're you're showing a very powerful example of someone who is pursuing what they see as their purpose and their mission and doing it their way.
I'm going to receive that, Ruby. I appreciate that reflection there. No, and I think that's really important because like doing it their way, like you said, and doing it their way, and really moving forward with the purpose, and receiving here was something that was really difficult for me. And I think as I think to you all thought leaders here, like part of the reason why this is so important to me is that to go out and change your world, however you define your world, to be able to make your vision come to life, having that sense of you having that, I kind of think of it right now as a tree, where it's like if you have the deep roots where you can stand so that you can weather any storm, and you can also grow tall enough and be in a place where someone can enter a room and look up and say, oh, I know where this tree is. I know I'm lost right now, but I have like my bearings. I just need to look up for the tallest tree in the room. Like having access to that is really important. And I think that if I'm being real about, showing up powerfully, being unique, and really standing out, right, and really taking up the space and creating the space, what I found is that I often create the most space when I take up space. Mm-hmm. And the other side of it is, in my attempt to not take up that space, I actually had a hard time receiving from others. So you really gave me some additional insight into me, right? Additional insight into when I go out into the world, what is the area that is where I can make the most impact? What's the thing that's already coming naturally to me? Mm-hmm. And I think that it's really tempting to allow that to be like, thank you, move on, right, rather than actually taking it in there. And what's happened is you've given me something else from my toolbox. You've added something else to my arsenal, and you've strengthened my roots so that I can stand more for what I believe, more for what I'm doing. And I think that, especially given our audience, given the people that are engaged in this conversation, because whether or not they're talking to us right now, if they're listening, they're engaged in this conversation. Like having those kinds of roots are important, and it's hard to be out there for other people without being there for yourself first.
Mm-hmm. It really is. I mean, I always say it's kind of impossible. I mean, we have to show up for ourselves. It's our divine responsibility to show up for ourselves and our growth and our evolution and be who we need to be in order to lead our missions the way it's meant to be led, and for you and just witnessing, because I feel like I've been blessed to witness so much of your evolution. Because there was a real lack of certainty at the beginning when our paths first crossed, and a real like, oh, could I do it this way? And now what I'm sensing is like, I'm going to do this way because this feels good to me. And that is a really, really big shift, because most entrepreneurs don't even get there. Like most entrepreneurs are going to get stuck in the hamster wheel of doing everything the way that everyone else is doing. And true thought leadership is about doing things your way. It's about bringing you to the table and injecting everything that you do with like your flavor and your vibe, because that is what makes you you, and that is how we stand out. We don't stand out by being like everyone else.
Not at all, right? And I think it's, as you're saying, this is part of why creating space is so important to me, because when I work with people, I'm not here to have them live my life again. I don't need them to like go be an actuary for a few years and then go do this. And like, no, that's not it. I love to be able to sit down and say, what do you want to do? What do you want to create? Great. Given that, and given you, what's your best way to get it done? What's the place that resonates with you the most? You're an entrepreneur? Great. You have to do business development? Awesome. What's your thing? How do we help like get you to the place where you shine, and when your people will be able to see and feel the impact that you make in their lives, where people will be able to experience you the best. And then for my thing here's the thing, Ruby, you should know this. I'm very lazy. Yes, I'm owning it. I'm owning it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nemo just owned his shit.
Yes. And that to me is an amazing strength of mine, because I love to create in the world. I love to get new things out there. I love to help people think differently. And I don't want to be caught in the trenches doing it over and over and over and over again. I know that So this comes here with, okay, let me do my thing the best way that I can. Let me create the content that I need to. Let me be out there. Let me share my thoughts. Let me make sure that it's accessible for other people in the way that's easiest for me. So 4 sentences is very hard for me. 4 sentences is very hard for me. 25-minute Facebook Live while I'm walking outside and speaking on a topic, super simple. And now I'm working with building out my team to allow me to show up however I need to show up. And then other people who their unique strengths are, where their gifts are, in able to repurpose material or to find the golden nuggets in everything. I'm leaving it to them to now go out and really help my message be proliferated in all the different platforms that it can live, in all the different ways that it can live. But it's why creating space is so important there, because otherwise I wouldn't have anything more to offer than mentorship from that place and for the game.
But the creating space really, it was initiated by you creating space for you first.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no way that you could have created this space that you're stepping into right now for those, who are meant to be led by you. There's no way you would have been able to create that space in the way in which you're doing if you weren't creating that space for yourself, and if you hadn't even created that space for yourself. There was the notion of taking up space and feeling comfortable with that and feeling like, oh yeah, I can take up the space, but I can also create space for myself. I can also create space to learn, to grow, to evolve out of like my old patterns and into this new way of being, which is really crucial to one's ability to lead effectively.
Absolutely. And can I speak about like the creating space for yourself really quickly?
Yeah.
I think that if I'm breaking this out a little bit further, part of the creating space for yourself is to really allow room for all of you to exist. Mm-hmm. To allow room for all of you to exist. I have an energy that comes up that is very joyful and can really come out as it's a big energy. And actually, at this intensive, I had a chance to invite people to participate in a dance party. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting for me was I invited people into the dance party. The music was cued. And I just started dancing. Like, I was having fun. I had a great time with it. And it was a Nemo moment where I was just like, I am just loving it. And then afterwards, people came up to me and they're like, the way that you led that dance party was phenomenal. Thank you for creating space, because I felt like I could do anything there and I wouldn't be awkward. There was no move that I could toss out that wouldn't work, and it was an interesting experience for me, Ruby, because in that moment I was just being all of me. Like, I'm like, I want to enjoy this music. Mm-hmm. I want to have fun with this here. And I just want to give this as an example of like, it could have felt like I was taking up the space, but instead what it was doing is I had now gone so far. My dance moves are amazing and plentiful. I had gone so far that it allowed others to be able to do more of their own thing. But I had to be comfortable myself, being so far out there, being so not out there in terms of how wild my moves were, but out there in terms of how much I was going to allow the joy of the moment to come through me, mm-hmm. to really be a part of this experience. So
and be visible in the moment, That in itself is, that's one of the reasons why so many people don't achieve what they want in their businesses or as leaders, because they're so scared of being visible. And I feel like that story that you just shared is a perfect example of someone who has the courage, who is utilizing their courage to be visible in that moment and create space. And in doing so, create space for others. So that's a really, really great story. Thank you for sharing that, because I was there and it was really fun and I loved it. And I hope that you join me in LA for my event, because I have multiple dance parties per day, but we can have that discussion another time.
Okay. Right.
So Nemo, we are nearing the end of this episode. I don't know how time flies. It's crazy, but do you have a final thought that you would love to leave for our thought leaders?
Yes. And what's coming up here is, as a thought leader, I'm going to invite you to think of yourself as a tree. All right? Think of yourself as a tree and think of your what you stand for needing strong roots and allowing those roots to grow deeper and deeper. That's the own personal work that you have, all that you do on yourself, as well as being grounded in whatever your vision is, right? So being able to bring that out there, and then also consider how you, by just showing up, can grow even taller. The way I look at it is like be the beacon for the people that you want to be to come into your world. And I love the tree idea, because it's like as you go deeper with your roots, you can withstand more. You can grow up taller with whatever energies you bring, whatever your message is, can be seen above the crowd, and then like you have these fruits that you can share with people through whatever your content is, throughout whatever experiences you have. But these fruits allow other people to engage with you, and to have access to you. And then there's seeds within those fruits. Those seeds will then go, especially as thought leaders, this is really important. Those seeds can then go out and be planted in other places and bloom where they're planted. And in thinking ourselves as a tree there, we allow ourselves to be able to grow in what we're doing. And rather than having to go out and put ourselves out there, it's like, let's stand for and be visible as we are, taking up as much space as we need to, and giving out our fruits so that our seeds can go out
Love
and
it.
flourish.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that analogy. It's a really great visual to hold on to, and um, it really does describe beautifully what it looks like to be a thought leader. So thank you, Nemo. Why don't you tell our audience how they can stalk you online? And then, audience, I will have all these links in the show notes.
Awesome. So you can go to empjoyment.com to find out more about what I'm up to right now. As I said, we're experimenting with a lot of different things. So come be a part of an upcoming event, an upcoming experience. It's something that occurs virtually as well as in person in various locations. And then I'm also, if you're interested in really staying in touch and seeing like where some of my fruits are, you can go and find me over on YouTube. Just look up Empjoyment. That's really where my thought leadership thrives. And I'd love to engage in a conversation with you there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really, really look forward to seeing what comes out of all this experimentation. And it's actually, for me, just witnessing where you were to where you are now. I think it's fucking incredible that you are experimenting and doing things differently. So thank you for showing up in that way. And I appreciate you being on today's podcast. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this special client feature on today's Thought Leader, where I'm challenging you to rise up, speak up, and create a movement. If you have any questions for myself or for Nemo, please reach out to us on social media. The links, again, are in the show notes. And be sure to tune in tomorrow for the final episode in this special series where I'm featuring incredible clients who inspire me. If you want to meet me in person and possibly Nemo, fingers crossed, then come on over to Los Angeles in February for my upcoming 3-day event, Amplified Soul Live. The link is rubyfremon.com/ASL. And this episode was sponsored by the Mayfair Hotel and Eve American Bistro, home of ASL 2019. I will see you all here tomorrow for another special edition of today's Thought Leader.